Here, let's take a look at the pattern. First is this collar. At the very bottom of the collar, there are 2 marking points. You need to mark them. Draw this pattern on the reverse side of the fabric. Then we will sew the 2 identical fabric pieces together with their right sides. We will trim the edges. The outer fabric and lining of the front, because I am using 60s high count cotton. Therefore, the number of pattern pieces is the same. Then there is a marking point at this position on the outer fabric that can be marked. The lining fabric does not need to be marked. I marked the lining here out of habit. So I just marked it. The ear is also drawn on one of the pieces of fabric. Sew the 2 pieces of fabric together with their right sides facing. Both sleeves, like the front and back pieces, have a normal 5 millimeters seam allowance. The main focus is to finish the underside. This side of the cuff is relatively narrow. We can first fold the fabric in half and press it. Then we use a ruler to measure the width of this small segment above the dashed line. Directly mark this width onto our fabric. That is the position of the dashed line. This is the position of the fold line underneath. Then use the line we just drew as a reference. Draw a 5 millimeter seam allowance above. After drawing, align the pattern pieces. Mark the positions on both sides. If you find it hard to understand, basically, we normally add a 5 millimeter seam allowance on all 4 sides of this pattern. Then simply fold it in half to use. I just think this is a bit narrow. Then using this method to draw makes it more precise. After tracing, take the traced position, then extend it 5 millimeters on both sides to mark the seam allowance. Then sew along the 5 millimeter seam line. Cut off this strip. Here I drew both cuffs together. Cut open the seam line in the middle of the fabric strip. This way it becomes 2 cuffs. Now I'll align it here to show you. It's the position of the fold line aligned with the dashed line above. Trace the other 3 edges. Then extend each of these 3 edges outward by 5 millimeters for the seam allowance. Finally, the skirt hem part. According to the dimensions given, add 5 millimeters on all 4 sides for seams. And here, let's join the sleeve and the cuff. Cover the cuff over the front side of the lower sleeve. Align the bottom edges for sewing. As for the upper cuff, its fold position is to the left. The opening is on the right-hand side. Sew directly along the top and bottom seams. After sewing it well, we fold down the upper cuff, neaten the seam at the joining position. Then we are at the bottom edge of the sleeve. Sew a top stitch. When sewing the top stitch, the seam underneath is facing to the left. Here I intentionally used a different colored thread to sew this top stitch. By the way, it can be made into a decorative line. After polishing, it looks like this. If the colors are different like this, then on this side, an additional decorative line effect. For example, the size I have in my hand now, its sleeves are relatively short, so I need to trim the seam at this joining point. If you make other sizes and this area is wider, then this seam does not need to be trimmed. Then we fold the sleeve like this once. At the center point of the topmost position, make a mark. Do it on the back side. Repeat the method. Take care of the other sleeve as well. Here we will work on the ear part. Sew the short straight line at the top. Sew along the lines at the other positions. The start and end positions when sewing. We make a 5 millimeter seam allowance outward. Then we cut off the 2 ears separately. the edge without stitching. We normally leave a 5 mm seam allowance. Use pinking shears to trim the stitched areas. If you don't have pinking shears, use regular scissors. Make some notches at the curved areas. Then we use straight hemostats to flip this ear over. After flipping, tidy the edges and lightly press with heat. You can sew another row of visible stitches to make it neater. This ear is relatively small. I placed a regular thin A4 paper underneath. It's the kind used for printing. Placing it underneath when sewing, I think it makes the sewing smoother. After sewing, flip it to the back side. Tear the paper apart like this to both sides. Don't pull it forcefully. Just follow along this colored line. You can just tear the paper apart like this. Remove the middle part. Finally, we draw on the back of both ears. Mark the position of this top stitch line. At the very top area where there is no seam, there is a 5 mm top stitch line. Two finished rabbit ears. We place it outside these two marking points. When sewing officially, we want to sew on the front side. Right now, this side I'm showing is the wrong side. Just to make it easier, I want to first point out this position. It is on the front side of the fabric. Place the inner edge of the ear like this. Align with this mark. If the fabric you use, you cannot see this mark from the front. You can prick it like this with a needle. After pricking it, we then turn the fabric to the front side. Mark the position of the needle hole with a pen. Like this fabric I have, it is slightly translucent. Even if it's not marked, I can still see this spot. Also, the straight line at the very bottom of the collar. You can also mark the front side. If you can already see the position yourself, then you don't need to mark it. Place the back side of the ear facing up and put it on the front side of the fabric underneath. Align the position of the marker point, then the position where to sew. Align with the position of this drawn line below. After aligning, move to the right along this sewing line. The blade is fixed at about 1 mm. After fixing, it looks like this. Next, we take out another piece of the same fabric. We stack the two pieces of fabric together with their right sides facing each position other like to the right angle, inserting a pin. Then insert a pin at this corner as well. Then sew upwards. This inner ring is not stitched. Then when we sew, at the start and end, we extend outward by a 5 mm seam allowance. That means the two spots where I draw the outer lines also need to be measured to the right angle position to place the lines. This is for when we flip it later. Flipping this corner will look neater. Those who don't know how to mark the lines can have a separate video about this in our tutorial folder. Then let's pay attention. When we cut off the collar, this position is not stitched. The seam allowance normally retains 5 mm. There is a problem. If you touch the rabbit's ear with your hand, it will be at this seam allowance position. It's very easy to accidentally cut the rabbit's ears. You need to tuck the rabbit's ears in first. Make sure you don't cut the rabbit's ears when trimming. Then you can trim the style in this area. After confirming the rabbit's ears are tucked in properly, we will extend this area outward by 5 mm to trim. While trimming, use your hand to feel forward. Be sure not to cut the ear. If it feels off, adjust it again. After trimming is done, let's pull this ear out again, like the size I have now. This ear is relatively short. For certain sizes, its ear will be longer. Trim the curved areas on both sides with scalloped scissors. If you don't have scalloped scissors, use regular scissors. Make some cuts at the curved parts, the straight line at the very bottom. Leave about a 3 mm seam allowance. The style on the sides adjacent to the right angle positions, we trim it at an angle. After trimming, we directly flip it over as a whole because there is a line placed at the right angle position. Pull it out, you can take a look. And draw it on the front side of our fabric to make it easier to align and sew later. After drawing the style lines, we sew 2 lines along the edge. If sisters like sewing ribbons, they can also sew ribbons. This can be done according to your own preference. Here I sewed 2 lines. The first line is 1 mm from the edge of the fabric. The second line is 3 mm from the edge of the fabric. These 2 lines form a Chinese style seam. Then, when sewing this top stitching, I also place paper underneath and the rabbit ears on the front of the car. The same method for the battery. Take the paper apart yourself. Here, let's first sew the front and back pieces of the outer fabric. The front sides of the front and back pieces facing each other. After pressing open, sewing at the notch front and back pieces. Separate the notch seam towards both sides. You can use an iron to press the notch seam here. You can also scratch it directly with your fingernail. After processing an iron, it looks like this. Then we repeat this step. Handle the lining in the same way, because I use the same fabric for both the outer fabric and the lining. So these 2 processed parts are exactly the same. Put the processed lining aside for now. Let's start by handling this outer fabric. Take out the collar we have made. The fabric underneath is facing right side up. This collar is also facing upward on the front. Directly overlap them like this. There are 2 marking points near the front of the neckline. Mark these 2 points on the front. When we sew this collar, align the front edge of the collar with this marking point. When stitching reaches this side, align the final end position of the collar with the marking point on this side. After aligning the points, we directly sew the seam along the top and bottom edges. After finishing the collar, it looks like this. Then we fold up the edges on both sides of the collar like this, exposing the rust cage underneath. We need to attach the sleeve at this position. Be careful when attaching the sleeve here. The sleeve and the rust cage underneath face each other. Also, on the marking point we made earlier on the sleeve, when we sew all the way to the notch position later, we need to align it precisely. When sewing, we align the top and bottom at the starting point with backstitching. Then we can see the curvature of this seam allowance, and the curve of the sleeve is completely different. So we need to sew while adjusting the position. Following this curve, sew this seam over here continuously. Pay attention when sewing the sleeve. As for the upper layer of the sleeve, it tends to get longer easily. That is to say, after we finish sewing, you feel the sleeve has gotten a bit longer. When you sew, you can pull the fabric underneath and slightly bring it towards your own side. Because on the upper layer of the sleeve, one issue is that it's very easy to do while turning. That is, your hand gently guides it forward. Or rather, it is pushed forward by foot pressure. This causes the problem of being slightly too long. If you're not confident, you can also use a bamboo needle to secure it. Or sew a seam by hand all around, and then secure it with the machine. After sewing, use the same method yourself. Also, finish attaching the sleeve on the other side. After both sleeves are attached, it now looks like this with the front side facing up. Then we take out the ceremonial cloth. The areas for contouring on both sides. I use the one inside that tutorial folder. I applied the second contouring method to it. Stack the ceremonial cloth and the outer cloth with their front sides facing each other. Here, we align the front piece with the front piece and keep the back like piece this with the back flip piece. It over entirely. Let the outer fabric be on the top layer. We start sewing about 1 centimeter above the hem edge of the front piece. The final stitching position is about 1 centimeter above the hem edge on this side. When driving from the marked point to the right angle position, we insert a line in. Flipping it later will look neater. Ladies who don't know how to lay the line, there is a separate video on laying lines at right angles in our tutorial all around folder. The neckline. Then insert a thread at this right angle position here. You can stop sewing when you reach this marking point. After sewing, it looks like this. It means sewing from this marking point here to that marking point. Trim the neckline style with pinking shears. If you don't have pinking shears, just use regular scissors to cut the edge. Trim the style next to the right angle diagonally, like this. Then we turn the fabric so that the right side is facing up. Take the processed contouring area, fold them together facing each other, like this. Measure the seam directly along the 5 millimeters crease line position. The processed contour area on the other side. Use the same method as well. After measuring the seams on both sides, the front and back pieces of the lining are all connected together. This is the position of the bottom edge. Then we will handle the outer fabric. Actually, the positions we need to handle on the outer fabric are the same. It's just that for the outer fabric's shaping area, so it has an extra sleeve. Set the lining fabric aside for now and don't worry about it. Replace the front and back pieces of the outer fabric facing each other. Align the side seam attached to the sleeve as well, along the style line at this position. You just need to measure directly from the bottom edge. After pressing well, handle the corner where the fabric turns. Make 2 notches on it, then we handle it the same way. The front and back pieces of the outer fabric and the side seams of the turn both sleeves to the front side. Take this right angle corner at the front. Didn't we put a thread inside? First, pull this right angle position outward like this. Don't remove the wire on this side. We are almost finished. Then remove the wires on this side because we still need to flip it back to process it later. Say it again. This thread must be removed only when the product is nearly complete. Now pull it out first. Check if the overall shape has any issues. If there are no problems, proceed to the next step. Now I'm holding the lining with my left hand. The right hand is holding the outer fabric. Then this middle part is the collar. We fold the collar towards the outer fabric at the back. Fold it down like this. First, use your fingernail to crease the fold at this position. Fix the position of the lining edge here properly. This way, the general shape of the upper part is already formed. After fixing it, set the upper part aside. Here, we will work on the hem part of the skirt. We cut the skirt hem according to the dimensions. Then, we add an extra 5 millimeters of seam allowance on all 4 sides. Fold the hem seam allowance upward, and then fold it inward. You can use an iron to press the hem area. After folding it properly, we turn it to the front side. If you don't intend to sew decorative stitching, you can just sew a line along the bottom edge to fix it. Once sewn, it looks like this. If you sew using a solid color thread, it doesn't really have any distinctive features. It just serves a fixed function, or you can do it like I do. Sew 2 lines with different colored threads along the bottom edge here. My first line is 1 millimeter from the edge of the fabric. The second line is 5 millimeters from the fabric edge. Then we proceed to work on this part of the waistband. We create the dart line here at 2 millimeters on both the left and right sides. Sew from the inside. Do not backstitch at the front. Loosen the thread a bit. Here I use thread number 4. Leave the thread ends longer as well. For sisters who don't know how to do double thread pulling, you can take a look. There is a separate video of the double line drawer in the tutorial folder. Then we simultaneously pull in the 2 base lines. Pull out this fold. One side feels tighter. Let's switch to the 2 bottom lines on the other side. After drafting the pattern at the hem, its size should match the bottom edge of the upper part of the outer fabric. We need to sew these 2 parts face to face, making sure to sew only the outer fabric. Then we sewed a section on both sides of the outer fabric, leaving only 1 centimeter. Sew the unstitched area like this, and then unfold it for stitching. The corresponding area on the other side will also be fully unfolded when we stitch the seam later. Do not fold this seam inward. After unfolding both sides, we align the outer fabric's hem with the pleated section of the skirt underneath. Sew them together with the fronts facing each other, stitching along the top and bottom whenever we reach the seam area. We press it open towards both sides. And I personally think this is a very important point. Align both sides of the front opening. Check if both sides of this position are aligned, or if there's a significant difference. Because I've seen many girls make clothes with similar front openings like this. One side is noticeably higher than the other. A slight difference is normal. If the uneven edges are visible to the naked eye, it is recommended to separate and handle them. If this situation occurs, it means that in the previous step, one side had more stitching. If there is no problem, had less. Then remove the dart line at the waist in the front. Then look at the current state of the garment. The skirt hem joined at the back is the outer fabric. The middle part is the collar, and the front side is the lining. Here we fold the entire bottom edge of the lining inward along the seam line towards the fabric's wrong side. When folding to the seam position, spread the seam allowance to both sides. After folding, you can use an iron to press and set this area. Then fold back to the wrong side, the spot at the front right angle where a thread was placed. This is the thread I mentioned earlier that you should not remove. It's because we still need to flip it back now. If you remove it, then the line placement you did earlier will be messed up. After flipping this part to the reverse side, it looks like this. Then, isn't there a section at the front here that hasn't been sewn? Now we need to patch up the section that hasn't been sewn. Sew down from the marking point to this fold position at the bottom edge of the lining. Just this section is enough. Then we need to pay attention to the fold position at the bottom edge. It needs to exactly match the position where the outer fabric and the skirt hem are joined below. The opening on the other side is handled in the same way. This is also the seam for this section. Then, as mentioned earlier, we'll sew these 2 sections in place. After sewing this part properly, we will then turn this part back to the front side. The hem on both sides at the bottom is also folded along the seam line toward the inside. Now the lining's bottom edge is still open. There are two methods to handle this. One method is to use the long stitch technique. Sew the folded edge of the lining's bottom to the seam line where the outer fabric skirt is joined. Use the long stitch method to hand sew around like Another this. Method is to tidy this side first. Then flip it to the front and sew a visible stitch around the waist, which will also secure the back part. If you're worried about sewing it directly like this, if you have something like waterproof tape on hand to temporarily secure it, you can fix it temporarily first. After securing it, flip it to the front side to sew. This makes sewing easier. When top stitching, place a piece of fabric behind the presser foot that matches the thickness of your fabric. Lift the area behind the presser foot. This prevents the starting point from slipping or getting stuck when sewing. After sewing, the front looks like this, and the back is securely held by the stitching. At this point, we remove the thread that was clipped in the front. Then the treatment at the positions on both sides of the front skirt hem. Haven't we already folded it in the front? We sew a full circle of stitching from the very bottom of the skirt hem up to the neckline. Sew continuously down from the opening here to the very bottom of the skirt hem. After the car is finished, it looks like this. From this point to here, then to here. All the lines on the car are 1 millimeter. You can also adjust it according to your own preference. It's fine to make it a little wider. Then we fold the collar downwards like this on the outer side. Use an iron to press it briefly. Finally, sew a hidden button at the front opening. I don't really recommend using Velcro here because Velcro leaves visible stitching marks when sewn on. Because this is, after all, a front opening. I myself also sewed on hidden buttons. Here I will specifically talk about ironing the skirt hem. Basically all skirts with pleats. After finishing the final product, we can use a garment steamer to iron them. I think this step is very important. Try not to omit it. The steamer you usually use at home will do. You don't necessarily have to buy a very small one. Also, about the steamer I have here, I personally think it's just average, not particularly easy to use. I don't make any recommendations. If you don't have a garment steamer but want to buy one, you can do some research yourself. If the hem of the skirt here is relatively short, you can use tweezers to straighten the lower part of the skirt's hem. Because my skirt hem is quite long, I just use my hand. But because of this steam vent, this steam is still quite hot. If it's possible not to use Try not to use your hands to avoid burning yourself, especially for the shorter skirt hems. Do not pull them with your hands after the skirt hem has been firmly ironed. If you compare it with the previous hem, the pleats here are relatively smoother. If you don't have a pom-pom, you can sew one yourself using plush fabric. Cut out the circle directly from the fabric according to the size given on the pattern. No additional seam allowance is needed. Sew with a running stitch from the plush side of the fabric, approximately 2 to 3 millimeters away from the edge. Then we insert the needle about 5 millimeters to the side. Then insert the needle again about 5 millimeters to the side. Keep repeating this stitch spacing up and down like this when inserting the needle. After sewing the entire circle, you can also sew it stitch by stitch. Here, I make several stitches at a time and then pull the thread out. You need to be careful about one thing when pulling the thread out. We can leave the thread end a little longer. There's no need to knot the thread end here. Then we repeat this step to sew all the way around the entire circle. Leave about a 5 millimeters gap between the start and end positions as well. Then simultaneously pull the thread ends at the start and finish closer together. Tighten this loop. Fill cotton into the hole it forms. After filling the cotton completely, let's directly tighten these two threads again. Tie a tight knot. Because the plush fabric has long fibers, the position of the eyelet is rather hard to see. After we sew it like this, it actually still has a small hole. We are at the spot of this small hole. Then sew a few stitches repeatedly like this. After sewing, secure the stitches yourself. This way, our little ball is finished. It's